Hi, this is Greg Thomas, and welcome to the Leadership Excellence channel. I am pleased once again to have an old friend, Paul Thornton, who is a recognized leadership influencer on our channel. He's going to discuss his latest book, and I'll put the graphic on the screen at this time. Leadership Skills Boost Your Effectiveness. I've known Paul for over 20 years now, and his entire career has been focused on management and leadership development. Paul's been an educator. He's a prolific author, consultant, business executive, and trainer, and he's presented numerous seminars and workshops around the world. On our previous podcast, we have discussed four other books that Paul has written, and I know I'll look like president of his book club, but I will go through them briefly just so that you get a chance to see them. Performance Management for New Managers. We had a podcast on that, and I encourage you to go back and take a look at that. The Leadership Process is another one that we covered. That is the leadership process. Are you effective at each step of the leadership process? Is your organization aligned? And then a few months ago, demands greater than coping skills, the real reason you're stressed and how to fix it. So I hope you enjoy this podcast today and let us know in the comments area if you'd like more future videos like this one. So, Paul, welcome to the Leadership Excellence channel.
Greg, thank you for having me back once again. I love talking with you. I love talking about leadership, so I deeply appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. I love talking about leadership as well. I think that's a common passion
Mm,
that both of us have.
I
So, Paul,
agree.
I've known you for a number of years, but my hope and goal in this podcast is to introduce you to some folks who may not be familiar with either you or your
Hmm.
work. And as we know, there are coming generations, there hopefully will be younger individuals, male and female in their 20s and 30s, joining our podcast in the future, running into it on YouTube. Maybe it's their first supervisory role or their
Hmm.
first chance to be a manager. And I want to introduce them to you and your work. So tell us about your background and how you got started and
Okay,
interested in the
sure.
topic of
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah, it goes back a long way to when I was in high school.
Hmm.
I was playing on the hockey team, and my team was kind of always average. We were kind of in
Hmm.
the middle of the league.
Right.
But there were two teams that were always like one and two in the league. And it got me wondering, why is that? Is it the players? Is it the
Hmm.
coach? And at my young age, I concluded the coaches of these top teams were doing something different than my
Sure.
coach was.
Hmm.
So it got me interested in what do the best coaches and teachers and consultants and managers do differently than the average or the good person?
Yes.
So that was kind of my first interest in leadership.
Hmm.
I then went off to college. I was fortunate to have Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard as teachers in college.
Mm.
And those
Remarkable.
two had developed the situational leadership theory model. And they were great teachers. They stimulated my interest and really got me energized on this whole field. And that kind of got me going to be a student of leadership, to learn as much as I could about it. And then as I got into my career, I became more of a teacher of
Hmm.
leadership, and I've done training programs and seminars and college courses and podcasts and things like that, and written a lot of books about it as well. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I did. It goes back to my days playing hockey.
Sure. Great. Obviously had a powerful influence
Yeah.
on your life. So today we're here to discuss your latest book, Leadership Skills Boost Your Effectiveness. You are a prolific author, and this is how many books have
I've
you?
written 30 books. This is
Wow.
my 30th book.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
incredible.
Thank you.
So what inspired you or motivated you to write this book?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always been interested in what the best leaders or managers do in terms of like running meetings or making presentations or giving feedback,
Hmm.
coaching. So it's been a curiosity of mine, and it's an angle I hadn't written about. And I really believe that the quality of our skills influence how effective we are as leaders. So
Hmm.
that kind of got me interested in, researching it and writing about it, and that got me going on this book. So yeah.
Yeah, great. It's a great topic and it's a great
Mm,
read. So thank you for that.
mm,
In chapter one, which is entitled Asking Questions, Tips for Enhanced Effectiveness, you made a statement that to me was a wow moment. It's just one of those things you read and you say, wow, that's kind of profound and very thoughtful. And here's what you said, and I'll quote you from it. You said, the most intelligent person in the room isn't the one with all the answers, it's
mm,
the one asking the best questions. And that
mm,
just really struck me because that's so contrary to the way that we communicate in our Western world. We're not very good active listeners, and usually
mm.
people in those situations are trying to prove to everybody how smart they are. So that one just kind of hit me between the eyes. Can you elaborate in this on this point for us?
Sure, Greg. I think the right question can cut through the clutter, the
Hmm.
noise, the confusion, and really get to the heart of the problem or opportunity that you're addressing. Um, Sometimes we spend a lot of time in meetings talking about a lot of these symptoms and the peripheral issues and ideas, but the right question, like I say, can focus us and get us to the core very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, a side note, one thing when I was running meetings back a while ago,
Yeah.
um, I used to set up my agenda items not as a term, but as a question. So I stated
Hmm.
the agenda item as a question. And again, that helped focus the group on exactly what our goal was, what we were trying to achieve. And I think that's a useful application of asking good questions as well. But I found, the better the question, the better the discussion. The more you're getting at the relevant and most meaningful issues that the group needs to
Hmm.
focus on and address. So I think it is important. What is the key question we need to solve today? What is the most important question we need to address? I think that's critical to get clear.
Good. And you carry that over in your book because after virtually every chapter and you give some tips, you ask some questions,
Mm, mm,
thought provoking. So I can see how that thread has been carried over
mm,
into your writing as well. So
mm,
later in this same chapter, and this is also a communication thing which caught
mhm,
my attention. Later in the chapter, you mentioned some tips to use while asking questions. And one tip again that kind of hit me, and
mhm,
I'll quote you once again. You say, be comfortable with silence, give people space to think and respond thoughtfully. Oftentimes, the most informative response follows a period of silence. End of quote. And again, I found that interesting because going back to our Western culture, it encourages constant commentary. People feel uncomfortable, almost freaky with silence. They feel like somebody has to say something. So I was hoping you might be able to comment on this and help us to understand it more deeply.
Yeah, I think silence, you're right. We tend to want to fill the silence with
Hmm.
saying something.
Right.
Silence says to the person, I really am interested in your thoughtful answer to this question. So you're giving them some time to think about it, to, you know, get at the real feeling or thoughts they have about it.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, I think it's a better it's a good technique to get clear on what the person really thinks or believes about the topic that you're discussing. So a little bit of silence is good. Now, don't get carried away with it and spend, 5 minutes of silence and nothing, no one's saying anything. I mean, I'm not
Sure.
saying that, but
Right.
giving them, 30 seconds, 45 seconds to think about it, ponder it, let them formulate their answer in their own words and their own time, I think is good.
Yeah, Paul, one reason I think that is just so helpful, and I appreciated it as a tip,
Mm,
was it inhibits knee-jerk responses. If people
mm,
feel like there's no room for silence, you have to answer immediately, people are going to respond before they've really thought it through. And
mm,
then they've committed themselves. Once you say something, you've taken a position. You've
mm,
taken a position or an opinion of your own. It's really difficult to backtrack once you think it through and even know that you're wrong.
mm,
Due to human nature and our own pride,
mm,
it's difficult to backtrack and say, after giving it further thought, I think I'm wrong, which is what we should say if that's the
mm,
case.
mm,
But it's far better. It shows a greater level of maturity to just
mm,
allow that silence to give us a few minutes to think through what was just said before we commit ourselves
mm,
to a comment on it. So
mm.
I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Now, in chapter 3, which is this title is Communicating Tips to Be More Effective, you said something that I think is a common problem, maybe one of the largest problems that I experienced when I was in the corporate world, is the illusion that communication has taken place.
Mm,
Here's what you said. You quote, the worst thing that you can do, assume that communication has taken place simply because you said something, sent an email, or posted a message. And it's amazing sometimes, no matter how subliminal someone may have been in communicating in that way, an email or an offhanded comment at a meeting,
mm,
that person just assumes everyone understands where they're coming from and
mm, mm,
what they want. So, can you expand on this thought?
mm. Yeah, I think in our own mind, we
Hmm.
are crystal clear on the thought or idea or message we're conveying. So it's
Right.
very, very, very clear to us. So when we communicate it, we're assuming that how could anyone not understand exactly what I meant, you know?
Hmm. Right.
And beyond that, when I send an email to someone and assume, we've connected, we've communicated,
Right.
I really don't even know if they read the email, do they understand the email? Are they going to do what I'm asking them to do in the
Hmm.
email? So
Right.
there's a lot of assumptions on my part. Um, Good communications requires some checking in, getting some feedback, ideally observing body language. Does the person look like
Hmm.
they're confused or they're not understanding it or are they distracted? Are they looking at their
Right.
cell phone while I'm talking to them?
Sure.
So yeah, we got to be, I don't know, careful and realize what's clear to us because we've spent a lot of time thinking about it may not be, it might be something totally foreign or they don't see it that way. It might be confusing to the other person. So checking in with them, asking them for feedback,
Hmm.
maybe asking them to explain your point in their own words, or maybe asking them based on what I asked you to do, what would be your first step? What would you do second? That type of thing.
Hmm.
Some feedback back and forth is often necessary. Now, you don't do that every time you communicate, obviously, but when you're getting into some really important critical items, you want to make sure the person understands it the way you intended.
Right. Good. Well
Mm,
said. And I appreciate your comment on that. As I said, I think
mm,
that's a big problem in a lot of our
I do too.
corporations today.
Yeah, me too.
In chapter 5, it's entitled Delegating Tips for Enhanced Effectiveness. You briefly mentioned a topic that I've always found fascinating. I wrote about it in We Lead online magazine probably 20,
Mm,
25 years ago. It's the problem with reverse delegation. I think this is more common than most people realize. And for the person who's affected by it, it can be uh, very devastating. Can you give
mm.
us a good definition of just what reverse delegation is and tell us what some of the negative consequences are when it's done?
Mm. Let me give an example.
Mhm.
Let's say, Greg, I work for you, and let's say that you have delegated a task to me to get done by a certain date. and you empower me to go off and get it done, make it happen, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I go off and I start working on it, and I run into a big obstacle and I throw my hands up. I'm frustrated. And I come back to you and I say, Greg, I'm just not getting this done. I'm not the right person. You're really the expert in this field or this area. You could do it much more efficiently than I do. I really think you should do this project or this task, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, some managers are flattered because the employee is praising how great they are and their expertise and what have you. And
Right.
some managers will take back the work that they had properly delegated, so reverse delegation, the employees
Mm-hmm.
giving back to the manager something that was properly delegated to them. The manager should keep ownership with the employee, the manager should say, well, no, I want you to do the task. I believe in you. I have confidence you'll figure it out. Identify what the problem is, and I will discuss with you maybe some ideas, but I want you to take ownership and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
the consequence of reverse delegation, of course, is the person doesn't develop the knowledge and skills and determination to work through issues and obstacles and things like that. Plus, it adds more work to you, the manager.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You, the manager, now have another thing you have to get involved in. So,
Sure. Sure.
and you're right. It doesn't happen all the time, but I've seen it happen enough that the manager will either take the whole project back or task back, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
agree to work with the employee side by side, so to speak, or the manager will take back a significant portion of the task. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
again, all of that is not helpful or productive for the employee.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree. I think there's an additional side of that too that I've
mm,
seen, unfortunately, and that is when the manager would just seize back what they had delegated. Maybe they think this person doesn't do it the way I do it,
mm,
or and they
yeah,
seize it back, and that
yeah,
person has felt like they're humiliated in front of their peers,
yep,
like they're incompetent and they couldn't do
yep,
the task, so it was taken back from them. And I've seen in many situations where that happened, that individual was quite never the same again.
mm,
They
mm,
felt
mm,
violated. They felt like the manager didn't have any trust in their
mm,
abilities. They felt humiliated in front of their peers. And
mm,
so it can be a very, very
mm.
negative situation
Yeah,
that
that's
I
a great
found.
addition, Greg. Yeah, that's really very accurate and harmful to the employee. You're
Hmm.
right. You're right.
Absolutely. In Chapter 8, which is entitled Goal Setting Tips for Greater Effectiveness, and goal setting is one of the things that I teach and
Hmm.
emphasize a lot with my many clients, you promote the Warren Buffett 25-5 rule, which I've heard, but I'm sure many
Hmm.
people listening to this podcast have not heard of it. For those unfamiliar with Warren Buffett's rule, can you explain it and give us an example?
Sure. The 25-5 rule or the 20-80 rule, it goes by different
Mm-hmm.
terminology, but basically it gets at setting priorities. You can't do everything. So
Mm-hmm.
the effective leaders and managers identify their top 3 to 5 priorities, the core things they need to get done that will make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we often get distracted, our managers often get distracted and try to do everything, and they get overwhelmed and they spend a lot of time on less important items and they miss getting the most important things
Mm-hmm.
done. So I always recommended the manager needs to write down, a leader needs to write down their top 3 to 5 priorities and post them in their work area, somewhere where they can see them
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day, and they're reminded that, these are the biggies I got to get done. These are the big things that are going to make a difference for my company, my strategy, my employees, whatever it might be. So it's very easy to get distracted and get into the weeds and the non-value adding
Hmm.
stuff that pulls
Sure.
us in many directions.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we'll go to chapter 11 in your
Okay.
book, which is entitled Motivation Tips for Increased Effectiveness.
Hmm.
You offer a number of excellent tips to motivate others. And what attracted me to it is my experience in the corporate world is that managers and senior leaders had a one size fits all approach to motivating others. They didn't want to take the time to get to know people as individuals. So they
Hmm.
thought, okay, this motivates everyone, a pay increase,
Yeah.
praise, right? And they come up with this one size fits all, and they treat everyone, no matter what their aspirations or background is, they treat everyone the exact same way.
Hmm.
Yet your tip is do not demotivate people. Regularly inquire what frustrates or demotivates you, then address or minimize those obstacles and barriers whenever possible, you say,
Hmm.
quote. And you say, Anna, getting back to what I said earlier, you like to ask a lot of questions in the
Hmm.
book, and that's a good thing. You say on a scale of 1 to 10, how effective are you at motivating people? Ask two of your colleagues to rate you. What
Hmm.
will you do to be more effective? So this tip has the potential to be very powerful. Yet I know that a lot of individuals, again, have that one size fits all approach. And obviously, um, it takes time to ask an individual what demotivates you, right? And address or minimize those obstacles. So, where are most people going wrong today in the management world with this one size fits all approach to
Hmm.
motivation?
Well, I agree, Greg. I think a lot of managers and leaders think that what motivates them motivates their
Hmm.
employees.
Good
Or
point.
as you've said, they think what motivates everyone is money and that's it.
Hmm.
People are different and unique and special. And one thing I always recommended is simply you, the manager leader, ask each employee, what motivates you? What
Hmm.
helps you perform at your best? I found when I was a manager, if I asked that question, most people would very quickly tell me what they most liked, tasks they most liked working on. Some liked working in teams, some liked
Hmm.
working by
Hmm.
themselves, etc.
Sure.
On the demotivation side, I also found that some employees, they show up to work, they're eager to, get at their work and add value and work with their team. So they have the right mindset and they're energized and what have you. And some of the ineffective managers and leaders do things that demotivate people. They take
Hmm.
that motivation away from them,
Right.
like micromanaging or like criticizing them publicly, or as you said earlier, like taking back work that you've properly delegated to them,
Hmm. Hmm.
hurting their trust and self-esteem.
Sure.
So the worst thing you can do is do things that demotivate an already motivated employee.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
on occasion, asking people, what frustrates you? Is there anything I do that, demotivates you? Gives you some additional insights to think about. Now, some people aren't going to tell you immediately that, when you do XYZ, it really demotivates me. But they
Hmm.
might tell you they don't like working endless hours on certain tasks or certain activities, or they
Right.
like more variety in their work, or they like working, like I said, in a team setting. So you can get some tidbits of information about, as I say, what will motivate them and what demotivates them. So
Hmm.
again, as a good manager leader, you're going to use that information to design the work and you know do what you can to keep them at operating at a high level. That's
Yeah.
the objective. You want to bring
Hmm.
out the best in them, like I said earlier with the coaches and teachers, and
Hmm.
they want to bring out the best in their people, and they do the things that make that happen.
Right. Good. Appreciate your comments in that.
Mm,
In chapter 14, you focus on time management, tips
mm-hmm,
for greater effectiveness. You make a statement that I know that if I said to some of my clients, I would get a lot of pushback on.
mm,
You quote once again from Warren Buffett, who is worthy of quoting, obviously a highly successful individual. And you say this about Warren Buffett, and again, I'll quote, he keeps his calendar deliberately light and focuses only on the most critical priorities and decisions. He often credits his success to, quote, saying no to almost everything, end of quote. And when I read that, the first impression from many CEOs and senior leaders that I've known would be, well, that's simply impossible. And yeah, sure, Warren Buffett can do it because he's got so many personal assistants to delegate to running around him. I don't have that luxury. So, can you help us to understand this recommendation more clearly? How can a typical CEO apply this who already feels like they're just totally overwhelmed? There aren't enough hours in a day for them to get the
mm-hmm,
tasks done that they need to do.
mm. Well, if we take the flip side of that, if
Hmm.
you say yes to everything, like the typical rescuer does, they say, yes, I'll help, I'll do this, I'll
Hmm.
join that team,
Right.
they get spread so thin and they're on so many teams and projects and extra assignments that they lose focus on what they should be doing, right?
Hmm.
And as we talked earlier, getting clear on your top 3 to 5 priorities is always critically important. So you're right. Some CEOs certainly can't say no to certain things. They need to make sure those things align with their top priorities and they
Hmm.
support their strategy and what have you. Sometimes you can, figure out what you can stop doing. There may be some meetings you can stop attending. Maybe you can decide what you can do less of.
Hmm.
Maybe your, once a week, 2 hour meetings, 2 hour meeting, you could cut back to an hour.
Hmm.
So there's some time saving steps you can take to free up some of your time to again help you, think and get clear on the big picture and the alignment of the organization and the strategic plan, things like that. I think
Hmm.
that's really important. If you're buried in the weeds, you're not seeing the big picture and you're not really um, doing what you should be doing as a senior CEO or president to align the organization and fix misalignments that occur in the organization for that matter. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know if I answered the question, but you can't say no to everything. I agree, but you can
Right.
say no to some things and
Hmm.
you can do less of some things as well. And I think that could free up some time.
Sure. I think most people can probably say no to more things than they realize. If they
Yeah.
really thought it through and took a look at all of the things that they're involved in, they probably don't really need to be involved in. I remember years ago, I worked for the CEO of a company, and he said to me, Greg, your plate is full. And his analogy was a plate full of food. And he says,
Yeah.
you can't add something to it unless you take something else off that plate.
Hmm.
There's just no
Hmm.
room left. You can only
Hmm.
do so much. You only have
Hmm.
so much time.
Hmm.
So, that's a difficult part of
Hmm.
leadership, but it's a very, very important one.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree.
In chapter 15, which is entitled Writing Tips for Enhanced Effectiveness, and you are an excellent writer, obviously written a lot of books and they're all very well written. Um, One of your tips is to incorporate technology to enhance your writing, and that's rather recent. I don't know how long. I mean, Grammarly's one of the earliest ones that came around, maybe a decade ago. But
Yep.
now we have Chat GPT. We have a lot of ways that AI can
Hmm.
look at our writing. And you
Hmm.
also mentioned Hemingway Editor to improve your writing. I'm just curious, which one do you personally use when you polish your books as you write
Mm.
them, or
Mhm.
memos? Which one are you using, and what would you recommend?
I use Chat GPT. I'll often, if I write a sentence or two and I'm thinking it's not really as clear or precise as I'd like it to be, I'll submit that in a chat and say, is there a better way to state this? And they'll give me, three or four different options or things to
Hmm.
think about. I also use Grammarly Pro,
Okay.
and they will do the same type of thing. They will take a look at a sentence or paragraph and make some suggestions on how to better state it. Now, these are great tools, I think, for giving you
Hmm.
immediate feedback for
Right.
you then to say, yeah, I think that would help here, or maybe not. Maybe
Hmm.
it gives you an idea to do something differently than either chat said or what you thought originally. So, again, it's useful feedback to help you clarify your ideas and make them as clear and as precise as you want them to be. So, yeah,
Sure.
there's a lot of tools out there that can help you be a clearer, more succinct, more precise communicator in writing.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Mm.
And in a related way, just a little tip for our audience, something I've begun doing about the last 6 months, are book reviews. Now, I read your book, but a lot of times what I've been doing recently, when I hear about a book that I'm interested in, before I write it, I will ask. I use Perplexity, which is a
Hmm.
form of AI, and I will say, please give me a 2,000 word book review on, and I'll mention the name of the book, and
Hmm.
it'll come back and provide me an excellent synopsis. And
Hmm.
I mean, really good
Mm.
synopsis of what
Mm.
the major
Mm.
points are in the book. So
Hmm.
rather than just going out and buying every book or maybe sampling it before you go
Hmm.
ahead and purchase
Hmm.
the book, the AI can be a very powerful tool to give you an idea of the content inside that
Hmm.
book.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
just a little tip that I've been using recently.
Yeah, I agree.
So Paul, what's next on the agenda? What's your 31st book
Mm.
going to be
I
on?
actually made a mistake, Greg. The book
Yeah.
Leadership Skills is my 29th book.
Okay. All right.
My
So we're ready for
30th
30th.
book is
Yeah.
coming out in well, soon, probably early
Okay.
December. And the title of that is What Would You Have Done? And
Oh,
it's a
great.
selection of short stories about some well-known leaders, about the
Mm-hmm.
problem they faced. And in the little chapter, at one point I say, what would you have done in this situation? So I want the reader to think about, based on the facts as presented in the case, what would they
Mm-hmm.
have done? And then when they continue reading, they see what the leader did. So it's kind
Oh,
of a
great. Yeah.
interesting way to see what you would have done and how does that match up or line up with what the leader did. And then I'm currently working on my
Mm-hmm.
31st book, which is on leadership traits. Now,
Okay.
this book we talked about today was leadership skills. I'm
Mm-hmm.
differentiating leadership traits or things like confidence, humility,
Mm-hmm.
integrity, things like that. So
Great.
that's what I'm
Good.
currently working on and hope to produce sometime
Mm-hmm.
in 26.
Great. Well, I hope you'll come back in
I'd
January
love to.
and we can take a look at number 30 that you're going to
Hmm.
be publishing real soon. So, Paul, do
Hmm.
you ever experience writer's block? Do you ever go through a period of time when you say, all right, I'm going to spend the next hour writing in this idea I have and just sit there and frustration and struggle to come up with something to say? Do you ever experience that?
Absolutely. Sometimes the ideas flow and
Hmm.
sometimes they don't. So when things are not flowing or not, coming together, I just get away from it and
Hmm.
do something else. And I typically write 2 to 3 hours a day, something like that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if it's not working, I would just
Hmm.
stop and say, well, it's not working today. I'll
Sure.
pick it up tomorrow, that type of
Right.
thing.
Well, sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent advice.
Mm.
So, Paul, any final comments? There's a podcast that I enjoy called Trigonometry, a couple of British podcasters, and
Mhm.
they end every podcast with the same question, and it goes something like, what should we have mentioned today that we didn't? So, what could we have talked about today we didn't touch upon?
Well, I think leadership skills, as we all know, is something that we need to work on throughout our life, throughout
Hmm.
our career. But I think the better you get, the skills you improve today will help you tomorrow. So, thinking about the idea of continuous improvement, getting 1% better each day,
Hmm.
that type of idea is good. But identifying the small things you can do and the habits that you can put in place to make you a better leader, better communicator, better at coaching, better at giving feedback, those types of things are very important. And
Hmm.
each of us have different things we need to work on. But the idea of committing and working on something that's going to make you a better leader, I think is really important for everyone, for all of us.
Sure.
And when I say leader,
Absolutely.
I'm talking about parent,
Hmm.
teacher, coach, doesn't matter.
Right. Good.
Mm,
Appreciate your comments
mm.
and just would like to say thank you, Paul. Again, we've been talking about his latest book, which is entitled Leadership Skills Boost Your Effectiveness. It is available now on Amazon.com. And I encourage you to go ahead and pick up a copy. As a matter of fact, if you're a manager or supervisor, I believe the paperback is very affordable. Go ahead and pick
Mm,
up a copy for your entire team and give it
mm,
to them as a gift. And
mm.
I'm sure they'll learn a lot from it and they will deeply appreciate it. So until next time, this is Greg Thomas on behalf of Leadership Excellence Limited, reminding you a quotation by Robin Sharma, who said, "Don't live the same year 75 times and call it a life." Thank you. We'll catch you next time. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Greg, for having me on.